She wasn't supposed to look at me like that. Not in that kind of light, soft, late afternoon gold spilling through the windows, turning the dust into something almost holy. But she did. And in that instant, I forgot how to breathe. Her name was Clara, and she moved like someone who'd spent her whole life being careful not to disturb the air around her. Everything about her seemed deliberate, the way she placed her cup down without sound, the way her eyes lingered just a moment too long before looking away. She was older, easily twice my age, maybe a little more. But it wasn't the years that drew me in. It was the calm, that quiet steadiness you only find in people who've already lost something they loved once. I'd met her through a friend who never showed up. It was supposed to be a group project, a casual meeting. But somehow, it ended up just the two of us, sitting across from each other in the near-empty cafe that smelled like cinnamon and old books. I remember how she smiled when she realized I wasn't leaving. "You don't have to wait," she said. "You're free to go." "I don't mind waiting," I replied, though I wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. Her laugh, low, warm, almost shy, filled the silence that followed. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, but her hand trembled just slightly. That tiny detail undid me. There was something in the way she spoke, a pause before answering, a softness that didn't come from insecurity but from control. She seemed like someone who'd learned the hard way that words could ruin things if you weren't careful. So, she only used the ones that mattered. Our conversation was ordinary, but the space between the words wasn't. I found myself studying the curve of her wrist when she lifted her cup, the faint lines at the corner of her eyes that deepened when she smiled. And every time our eyes met, she held mine for just a fraction too long, long enough for me to feel the question she wasn't asking. "Do you always look at people like that?" she asked suddenly, voice barely above a whisper. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to memorize them." I wanted to tell her that I was. That I already knew I'd remember the shape of that moment, the way the air seemed to hum between us, the smell of coffee cooling between our hands, the soft rhythm of her breathing just a few inches away. But I only said, "I didn't mean to." Her lips curved, not quite a smile, not quite disbelief. "No one ever does," she murmured. Time folded in that small cafe. Every sound seemed distant, the low jazz from the speakers, the faint clink of a spoon from another table. It was just her and me, sitting too close for strangers, too aware for friends. I caught myself staring at her hands again, graceful, ringless, resting on the table's edge. When she noticed, she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm up slightly, almost invitingly. My fingers brushed hers, not even a full touch, just a ghost of one, but it was enough. She looked up, startled, but didn't move. The world narrowed to that single point where our skin nearly met. Then the bell over the door rang, sharp, real, breaking the spell. Clara pulled her hand back, her composure returning like a curtain falling. "You should go," she said softly, eyes fixed on her cup. "Your friend might still come." But we both knew he wouldn't. I stood there for a second, watching the way the light caught her hair. I wanted to say something, anything that would keep me in that moment. But I didn't. Because she looked up one last time, and the way she looked at me, like I was the one thing she'd been waiting her whole life to find, made it impossible to move or to stay. The door closed behind me. But her gaze followed. I didn't expect to see her again. But a week later, I walked into the same cafe, half out of habit, half out of something I didn't want to name, and there she was. Same table, same calm posture, same quiet presence that made everything else blur. She looked up when I entered. Surprise flickered across her face, then something softer, something almost like relief. "You again," she said. "Me again," I replied, trying to sound casual, like I hadn't been thinking about her since the moment I left. This time, she didn't tell me to sit. She just smiled, small but real, and gestured toward the chair across from her. The conversation was easier now, but that only made it harder. She told me about her work, something in art restoration, delicate and patient. A kind of slow resurrection of things that time had almost erased. She spoke with her hands, tracing invisible shapes in the air. I told her about school, my half-formed plans, the way everything in my life still felt like it was waiting to begin. She listened, really listened, and it startled me how rare that was. Between sips of coffee and fragments of silence, her story unfolded in pieces. She had been married once. A long time ago, she said, with a small shrug, as if she were brushing dust from her sleeve. No children. No current partner. Just work, a few close friends, and a house that was too quiet. When she laughed, it wasn't carefree, it was the kind of laugh that sounded like it had to fight its way out. Do you ever get used to being alone? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes lifted to mine, steady, assessing. You don't get used to it, she said after a pause. You just get better at pretending it's a choice. Something about the way she said it, quiet, unguarded, made my chest tighten. I wanted to reach across the table again, but I didn't. Not yet. The air between us felt different now, not new, but charged with recognition. Like we'd found a language we both knew, but weren't supposed to speak. Later, when we stood to leave, she brushed past me to reach for her coat. Her hand grazed my arm, just a touch, a fraction of a second, but it lingered longer than it should have. The scent of her perfume, faint jasmine, something clean and warm, caught in the air between us. You're too young to be this serious, she murmured, half a tease, half a warning. I tried to laugh, but the sound stuck in my throat. And you're too beautiful to be this lonely, I said quietly. Her breath caught, I heard it. Then she looked away, shaking her head with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Don't say things like that, she whispered. You don't know what they mean yet. But she didn't step back. We stood there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her shoulder through my sleeve, close enough to see the faint tremor of her lip before she pressed it shut. Neither of us moved first. The world had gone silent again, holding its breath for something neither of us was brave enough to do. When she finally looked up, the moment was already gone, but the electricity stayed, humming quietly beneath our skin. It started raining that evening, the kind of rain that doesn't announce itself, just appears, soft and relentless, like a secret being whispered to the pavement. I'd stopped by the cafe again, but this time it was closed. Through the window, I saw her, inside, wiping down the tables, hair loosely tied back, the sleeves of her cardigan pushed up past her elbows. I knocked, gently. She looked up, surprised, then smiled before catching herself. She hesitated, just long enough for me to think she might not open the door. Then she did. You're persistent, she said, stepping aside. Just escaping the rain. Of course, she murmured, half smiling. The cafe felt different without people, quieter, dimmer. The air was thick with the scent of coffee grounds and rain-damp air. She locked the door again behind me, an unconscious gesture that sent a ripple through the silence. We talked about nothing at first, music, old movies, the smell of wet earth. But the words kept thinning, until all that was left were glances and the faint hum of rain against glass. At one point, I reached to pick up a fallen napkin, and my hand brushed hers. She froze. I did too. That same pulse, sharp, familiar, cut through the quiet. I shouldn't be here, I said, but neither of us moved. No, she agreed softly. You shouldn't. Her eyes searched mine, steady, as if trying to decide which of us would break first. And maybe that's what made me reach up, not to touch her, not yet, but to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Her breath hitched. For a second, she leaned into my hand. Then a vibration broke the air, her phone, lighting up the counter beside us. She turned quickly, almost too quickly, to grab it. The name flashing on the screen made her expression falter, Someone I didn't know, but someone who still mattered. She silenced it without answering, then set the phone face down. The rain grew louder. She exhaled, long and slow, then whispered, "You shouldn't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like I'm possible." Her voice cracked on the last word. I took a step closer, just one. Close enough to see the reflection of the cafe lights in her eyes. Close enough to feel the heat of her body through the thin space between us. "Tell me to stop," I said. She didn't. Instead, she lifted her hand, hesitant, trembling slightly, and brushed her fingertips against my jaw, as if testing the reality of me. I closed my eyes. That single touch burned through every layer of restraint I had left. Then, as if the world couldn't bear the weight of it, the front door rattled, someone trying the handle. She stepped back instantly, breath shallow. The lights outside flickered, it was just a passerby, taking shelter from the storm. But the spell had already broken. When she looked at me again, her composure was back, but her eyes gave her away. "I can't," she started, then stopped. I nodded, though every part of me wanted to reach for her again. She turned away, hand pressed to her chest as if to calm something inside. "This can't happen," she whispered. And still, when I left that night, soaked from the rain, she stood at the window watching. Neither of us waved. But she didn't turn off the lights until I was gone. I told myself I wouldn't go to her house. I told myself a dozen times. And then I was standing at her door, knuckles damp from the fog, heart doing something between trembling and defiance. She opened it before I could knock again. No makeup, hair unbrushed, wearing a soft grey sweater that fell off one shoulder like it had forgotten how to stay in place. "God," she breathed, voice small. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." She stepped back, but not enough to make me leave. The warmth from inside touched my face, the scent of her, jasmine again, faint and human, was enough to make reason feel like a weak thing. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She closed the door behind me, slow, deliberate, as though sealing something in. We stood there for a long time, not touching, not speaking, just the sound of our breathing filling the space. "You didn't answer my message," I said finally. She looked away. "Because I didn't know what to say." "You could have said you didn't want me to come back." She smiled, sad, almost tender. "Would you have listened?" I shook my head. She knew I wouldn't. Her eyes softened. "You're so young," she whispered. "You think wanting something is the same as being ready for it. And you think being older means you're not allowed to want it at all," I said. That made her flinch, barely, but I saw it. I stepped closer. She didn't move this time. Her hand was resting on the back of a chair, fingers curled tight, knuckles pale. I reached out and touched them, gently, like testing if she'd still let me. She did. "You have no idea what you're doing," she said, voice trembling now. "I think I do," I whispered. "I'm standing in front of someone who's pretending not to feel what I feel." Her eyes met mine, sharp, wet, alive. "You don't understand what this costs." "Then explain it to me," I said, stepping closer still. She drew a shaky breath, and I could see it, every layer of control she'd built, starting to crack. "People will talk. You'll regret it. I'll regret it. Then let's regret it together." She exhaled a laugh, half disbelief, half surrender. The sound broke something between us. I lifted my hand, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered at her temple, tracing the line of her cheek. Her eyes closed, slow, like a door being softly shut. "Tell me to go," I said, my voice barely more than a breath against her skin. Her lips parted, but no words came. She swayed, just slightly, enough for me to feel the weight of her lean toward me. My other hand found her waist, tentative, reverent. The air between us was hot, fragile. I could feel her heartbeat, fast, uneven, through the thin fabric between us. Then, just as our foreheads touched, the faint sound of knocking shattered the moment. We froze. Her eyes opened, wide, panicked. "Don't," she whispered, stepping back. "Not now." But her hand stayed against mine, fingers tangled, even as she turned toward the door. And for one suspended heartbeat, neither of us let go. It was 3 days before I saw her again. 3 long days where every sound seemed to echo her voice, every silence felt shaped like her absence. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, that night, the near kiss, the way her hand wouldn't let go. But then she called. Her voice was tight. "Can you come over?" When I got there, she looked different, composed, guarded. Like she'd rebuilt her walls brick by brick since the last time I'd seen her. "We need to talk," she said. The phrase hit like cold water. I followed her into the living room. The curtains were half drawn, light filtering through in pale lines that sliced across her face. On the table, her phone sat face down again, same as before, but this time I noticed the faint crack on the screen. "Someone came by," she said quietly. "A friend. She saw you leaving that night." I waited, but she didn't meet my eyes. "She asked who you were." "What did you tell her?" She hesitated, too long. "That you were just a student. Someone I was helping." The words landed heavy. "That's all." She looked up then, guilt flickering in her eyes. What else could I say? I took a step closer. "The truth." Her breath caught, sharp, defensive. "And what is the truth, exactly?" "That you think about me. That you want." "Stop." Her voice broke through the air like a whip. "Don't." Silence expanded between us, thick and uneven. She turned away, gripping the back of the couch, as if to steady herself. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "You have everything in front of you. You don't need this." I moved closer, not touching her yet. "Then why call me?" She closed her eyes, shaking her head. "Because I can't stop." The confession hung there, raw and unguarded. I watched her shoulders rise and fall, her breath shaky. When she finally turned around, her eyes were shining, not with tears, but something fiercer, something that made my pulse stutter. "I kept telling myself it was harmless," she said. "That I could control it. But I can't. You make me." She stopped herself, pressing a hand to her mouth like she could swallow the words. I stepped closer until there was barely space to breathe. "You make me lose control too," I whispered. Her hand dropped, and for a second, we just looked at each other, the air between us thick with everything unspoken. Then her phone buzzed again. Same name. Same flicker of fear in her eyes. "Who is it?" I asked, voice low. She didn't answer. Just reached for it, but I caught her wrist. Her pulse was racing beneath my fingers. "Tell me," I said. She hesitated, then whispered, "My ex-husband. He never really left." The world tilted. The faint hum of tension turned sharp, dangerous. I let her wrist go slowly. "Does he know about me?" Her silence was the answer. I took a breath, but it came out unsteady. "Then this isn't just about us anymore." "No," she said, voice breaking. "It never was." But even then, even with fear flickering between us, she reached out, fingertips brushing mine like a promise she didn't know how to keep. "Stay," she whispered. And despite everything, I did. It was late when I went back to her house, later than I should have, later than reason would forgive. The street was empty, the world wrapped in that strange stillness before midnight, when everything feels suspended. She opened the door before I could knock. Like she'd been waiting. Neither of us spoke. The lights inside were low, a single lamp glowing gold against the dark. The air smelled faintly of rain and jasmine again, but stronger this time, like her pulse had carried it through every room. She closed the door, slow. I told myself I wouldn't call you again, she said quietly. I told myself I wouldn't come. We both failed. Her hand brushed mine as she passed, light but deliberate. My heart jumped. I could hear it in my ears, that wild, unfiltered rhythm that only happened when she was near. Why are you here? She asked. I don't know. Yes, you do. I laughed once, soft, nervous. Because I can't stop thinking about you. Something flickered across her face, fear, hunger, recognition. You shouldn't say things like that, she whispered. Why? Because I'll believe you. She took a step forward. Then another. My back hit the edge of the table behind me. The distance between us disappeared until her breath mingled with mine, warm and uneven. Her fingers hovered near my collar, trembling, not from uncertainty, but from the effort it took to hold back. This is wrong, she murmured, even as she leaned closer. Then tell me to leave. She didn't. Her forehead rested against mine, eyes closed. I could feel the heat of her skin, the faint catch in her breath. My hands found her waist, not to pull her closer, just to steady us both. Do you know what you're doing? She asked. No. Do you? She smiled, small and broken. Not anymore. We stayed like that, suspended between restraint and surrender, both knowing this moment couldn't last and neither of us willing to end it. When she finally opened her eyes, there was no hesitation left, only clarity, sharp and devastating. You'll regret this, she said softly. I already do, I whispered. And I haven't even kissed you yet. Her laugh was shaky, breathless. You shouldn't make promises you can't keep. I'm not promising, I said. I'm asking. Then, she moved. A fraction. Just enough. My lips brushed hers, not a kiss, not fully, but enough to burn. Enough to ruin pretending. She pulled back first, eyes wet, voice barely holding. If we do this, everything changes. Hasn't it already? She stared at me for what felt like a lifetime, searching for a reason strong enough to stop. There wasn't one. Her hand slid down my arm, fingers intertwining with mine. The touch was both a surrender and a goodbye. I understand you now, she said, voice trembling. And that's what scares me. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far off, the sound of a choice being made. Neither of us moved, but everything between us shifted. It wasn't peace. It wasn't victory. It was truth, raw, irreversible, and finally shared. The next morning came slowly, a pale, grey light seeping through her curtains, soft as breath. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, half dreaming, half listening to the sound of her moving somewhere down the hall. The house felt different. Lighter, maybe. Or maybe I just was. When she appeared in the doorway, she looked unguarded. No practiced smile, no poised distance, just Clara, barefoot, hair undone, holding 2 cups of coffee. You stayed, she said. Not a question. Did you want me to? She hesitated, then nodded, setting 1 cup beside me. I think I did. For a moment, we didn't speak. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was comfortable, like we'd finally stopped pretending the air between us wasn't real. She sat down across from me, legs tucked beneath her. The morning light found her face, softening every line time had etched there. I realized I'd never seen her this close in daylight, no shadows, no half-lit mystery, and she was still every bit as beautiful. I used to think I was past all this, she said after a while. That I'd already had my chance at whatever this is. I smiled. And now? She looked at me, really looked, her eyes steady and warm. Now I think I was just waiting for someone brave enough to look back. That did something to me, something quiet, deep. I reached out, my hand resting on hers. Her fingers curled around mine instantly, like they'd been waiting to. You know people will talk, I said, half a warning. Let them, she replied, squeezing my hand. They always talk. They don't stay. She leaned back, studying me with that faint, teasing glint that had first pulled me in. You're still too young, she said softly. I grinned. You've said that before. And you never listen. I'm starting to think that's why you like me. Her laugh was quiet, the kind of laugh that reaches the eyes. Then she reached up, brushing her thumb across my cheek like she couldn't believe I was really there. I don't know where this goes, she whispered. Neither do I said. But maybe that's okay. The rain had stopped outside, leaving behind that hushed stillness that always follows a storm. The world felt washed clean, raw, real, and a little fragile. She shifted closer, until our knees touched. I could feel her warmth, her heartbeat steady and sure. She leaned her forehead against mine, her voice barely a murmur. Then let's just start here. I nodded, closing my eyes, breathing her in. No rush, no fear, no pretending. Just two people who'd finally stopped running from what they already knew. When she pressed a soft kiss to my forehead, it wasn't desperate, it was grounding, certain, alive. And for the first time since that first glance in the cafe, I knew neither of us would forget this, not because it was forbidden or complicated, but because it was real. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?